Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. The radio and TV version of the show air in over 12 states. This includes both coasts and Silicon Valley. The show also airs in the UK, Caribbean, and Australia. For full show times, plus past episodes of the TV and radio show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. We just launched a free online community to connect past guests, listeners, and others. This community will allow you to network, chat on Slack, or get help with anything else, and a lot more. If you're interested in joining the community, buying some merch, sponsoring the show, or signing up for the newsletter, please go to buildingthefutureshow.com. The show is a proud media partner for the 11th Annual Media Excellence Awards, which are produced by Access Entertainment in Los Angeles, California. The Media Excellence Awards are recognized as the most influential awards show honoring innovation and leadership in all things mobile entertainment, lifestyle, and technology. For more information on how to submit to these awards, please visit mediaxawards.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Julie Broad. She's the founder at Book Launchers. Julie, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you guys are doing at Book Launchers is actually really interesting and innovative. But maybe before we get into all that fun stuff, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Sure. I grew up somewhere where pretty much nobody's going to know.
Sure. No, that's great.
It's a tiny little town in rural Alberta. If you looked on a map, it's right in between Calgary and Medicine Hat.
Sure.
Yeah, so I grew up in a town where the joke was, the population sign said 2,100 people, but everybody said that included the cows and probably the chicken.
Yeah, but I think that in itself, like some people think that just because they grew up in a small town, they don't have, the opportunities to actually, create something or build their business or move to America. Like there's a million, right? Like I think sometimes people get kind of trapped in that. And I think, some people are happy staying in a small town. Some people want to move out of it. And, you've obviously kind of moved around a bunch. But you went to university. What did you take and why?
So that's actually kind of funny because I went to university and took business school. But
Okay.
growing up, I was always drawn to writing, but people always said, oh, writers don't make any money. So of course I went into business.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So was there something though that other than that, was there like something that got you interested in business, or you were like, I should probably just get a business degree?
Well, I always kind of saw myself in the future as running my own business.
Gotcha.
My parents ran a small motel on the side of the highway. If
Okay.
anybody's ever seen the Vin Diesel movie, Knockaround Guys, I think is what it's called. That's actually filmed in my parents' motel.
That's cool.
Yeah, so you could kind of see what that was like. So they always ran their own business. So I guess in my head, I always kind of figured I would eventually do that. So business school made sense from that regard. But the funny part is, I went back to school and did an MBA. So business school
Okay.
wasn't enough. I went and did a master's in business too. But I took finance and real estate. And
Okay.
like again, the furthest things away from being a writer that you could possibly be.
Sure. Well, but I think, and once we get into Book Launchers, I think like, yes, you can go to school to be a writer, obviously, but I think anybody can become a writer, right? And doesn't mean you're necessarily the greatest at it. You could put out your own books and kind of publish content online, and I encourage people to do that. So I think it's interesting, right? So what made you kind of want to go into kind of real estate and finance?
Money, really, truly. Like I was
Okay.
driven by, what can I do to create more financial security and options in my life. And it was driven by the desire initially to make six figures. For some reason, I got this in my head that I had to have a six-figure salary, and so
Sure.
the MBA was the fastest way to get there. And everybody always told you to work on your weaknesses, and I heard this a lot. Work on your weaknesses, and anything kind of writing related came naturally, and anything I had to memorize was really easy for me. But math
Interesting.
and accounting and finance was painful. So I was like, well, I got to get better at this. So that's what I did.
Interesting.
So I hated my MBA because I took courses that I did not like, and I really had to struggle through them all.
Wow.
It was not an ideal thing to do, but it does provide a basis for a lot of the books that we're working on at book launchers, where because a lot of financial planners, a lot of real estate people are writing books,
Sure.
and they should be. It's good for their business. So I have a really solid foundation when I'm looking at their book. So that part's worked out really well.
No, that's interesting. So I'm curious, now that you've been through the MBA and you've kind of been doing your own thing for a number of years, do you agree with that advice where you should work on your weaknesses, or should have you have focused more on your strengths and just got better at that?
Yeah, I honestly, I have a new son, and I look at him and I'm like, I hope he always pursues the things he's good at and just becomes the best in the world at them.
Sure.
And I really think that that's the best approach, because you can hire people who are phenomenal
Exactly.
at something else, and you just be the best at what you're really good at and what you love to do. And I think that sets you up for a much happier and more successful life.
No, I 100% agree. And yeah, I think that's always kind of, I've heard that too from people. And it's just like, that's never really made sense to me. It's almost the same to me as like, I am not a morning person. So when somebody's like, the 5 things you should do every morning, and I'm like, that's not me.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not going to, I can't physically change that. Like, I always find those kind of things that are counterintuitive to how I am always a challenge to actually adopt. And I just kind of like forget about it. Right. So it's interesting to have other people that have kind of been through it, say kind of the same thing, that they wish that they maybe would have just followed what they were good at. So I think that's interesting. But walk me through, you get out of school, you've done a bunch of stuff. Walk me through your career kind of up until book launchers.
Yeah, so when I graduated well, first of all, when I graduated from undergrad, I took a job with Kimberly Clark Canada, selling Huggies and Kotex and Kleenex and all that
Okay.
fun stuff. A-
Interesting.
And a few months into it, it was actually a really, really fun place to work at the time. There was lots of sales meetings. There was lots of, just lots of fun, and really, it was really, really fun. But I just kept thinking, it's really going to be a long life of working for somebody else.
Sure.
And one of my coworkers mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad, that her daughter had read it and
Okay.
really loved it. So I drove to the bookstore after work, because that's what you had to do in the early 2000s.
Sure. Yeah.
And picked
I remember those
Yeah,
days.
exactly. I had picked up a copy of the book and
Yeah.
read it, and I was like, "Oh, this is a whole new way of looking at things." And really the biggest takeaway for me was that I didn't want to have to work hard for my money all the time. I wanted my money working hard for me. And and,
Sure.
and that got me into real estate investing. Really literally overnight. I dove in and I bought every book imaginable on real estate and multiple streams of income and all these kind of things, to figure out, okay, what can I do to make money while I'm sleeping, basically, was my goal. and
Sure.
and that got me into real estate, which is also
Okay.
part of the reason why when I went back to school, because that was a side gig, right? This was a side,
Sure.
this was a plan B. I was still getting I was still going for that 6-figure salary. So that's part of the reason why it was real estate and finance when I went back for my MBA, because I did like real estate a lot. I liked the prospect of it, so I wanted to study it further. So that's why I took it into my MBA. So the MBA was, like I said, torture. Did not like it, and the real estate that I did in the MBA was, analyzing gigantic development projects versus the single family home that I was buying, renovating, and adding a suite to.
Interesting. Okay.
There's a ginormous disconnect between what I wanted to be doing and what I was studying, which is also why I didn't like it. I didn't see how I was going to use this. I also thought the financial analysis that you did was really ridiculous, because you're picking a whole bunch of factors that you think could happen and guessing, like, okay, that could increase the price by this, and this could change the value of this, and like you're really just guessing. And so I didn't care for any of that stuff. Um,
Interesting.
but fast forward, so that real estate investing that I started in 2001, it was always going on. And at some years, I partnered with my boyfriend at the time, and we ended up both liking it and going for it. And so over the course of the next 8 years, I think we bought 12 or 14 properties. And
Wow.
and it kind of led to the point where when I was sitting in my job, I reached that 6-figure salary, and I kind of went, oh, that's it. This is what I've been working so hard for.
Interesting. Sure.
And I was just I sat there for a year in this job. I got promoted to vice president. You know, I had a pretty good gig, and I was like, okay, great. You know, I'm in my 20s, and this is what it's going to be.
Sure. No, interesting. So when you started though doing real estate investing on the side, did you self-fund, or how did you kind of buy these actual properties?
Yeah. So the first property, I had money set aside because I had planned to go back to do my MBA. When I graduated from undergrad, I kept living like a student. And so
Okay.
I was one of those really frugal people who I didn't have a bed. I slept on a mattress on the floor. I didn't have
Okay.
furniture. You know, I really did live like a student until my debt was paid off and I had some money in the bank.
Interesting.
So I had about $16,000 saved that I was going to use for my MBA. And I ended up putting that towards my first property. And then, like I said, I partnered with my boyfriend who had
Sure.
$7,000, and we put that towards the second property.
Gotcha.
And that was how we got the first two. But after that, we were out of money, and I was a student and couldn't qualify for financing. So that's when we got creative, which really it leads beautifully into, you know, kind of where I am today, because we got creative, which means we bought other people's problems. You know, the people who would give us their deals for no money down or would finance the property. They're people who want to get rid of their properties,
Sure.
and they want to get rid of them for a very good reason. So we ended up buying a lot of places that caused us gigantic problems, and we bought them all over Canada. So we ended up with properties in 6 different cities in the country,
Wow.
2 different provinces. It was a mess. And while we made money on almost all of them, there's only one that we lost money on. You know, emotionally, we were a disaster.
Okay.
It
Interesting.
it was not fun. And a lot of those stories led to me writing my first book.
Okay.
And that's, you know, kind of the start of getting into book launchers, because one of the properties that we bought became a known crack house. And
Okay. Wow.
yeah, and it became a known crack house because the property manager that managed it was pretty much the only guy in the city of Niagara Falls that would manage this property, because it was
Okay.
in a bad street. And he he got into a fight with a tenant one night, punched the tenant fell to
Oh,
the
wow.
ground, and the tenant died in the hospital. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was horrible. He, you know, and our property manager got charged with manslaughter, and then was put under house arrest. Well, now nobody would touch our property for sure. So he was the only guy that would manage it, and he was managing it while dealing with the fact that he had, you know, not intentionally, but he had killed someone, and everything just spiraled from there. And yeah, it became a drug den, and
Wow. So how did that put strain on kind of your relationship? Because I think sometimes, like some people say, never work with kind of, you know, your boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife or kind of significant other, or like your friend. How did that kind of relationship succeed or suffer?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that were actually going on, but this one was kind of that, you know, the feather that goes on
Got you.
that breaks everything. Because the tenants in the property somehow got a hold of our home number, and they
Oh, wow.
started calling us because there was lots of work that wasn't getting fixed, and like there was just all kinds of problems. So they started calling us at all hours. We ended up with a fire code violation, that, you know, because the police always got called to site, and then the firemen went in there and did an inspection. And if they inspect any property, they're going to find violations.
Sure.
But in this particular property, there was a lot. We didn't get the first notice. But then the second notice is an immediate court date, and so we had no opportunity to fix it. So wherever that first notice is, we don't know. We can't prove that we didn't get it, and then we had to go to court. And basically, we had to go to court and plead guilty to these fire code violations because, you know, they were there and we never got the first notice. So yeah, things just really spiraled, and this is all going on while we have properties all over the place. And you know, anybody who's ever owned properties knows that everything will be fine for 6 months, and then every single property has something wrong all at once, and that's just how it goes. And so, you know,
Interesting.
all this is happening while, you know, the furnace is going somewhere else and the pipes are breaking somewhere else. And yeah, you know, that kind of pressure on anybody
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yep.
is pretty tough.
Sure, I can imagine. Wow, that sounds, yeah, interesting. It's not as, I think the thing is, like, I've had just even friends who's like, we should like buy a condo and then like renovate a little bit and flip it. I'm like, no, I'm not interested at all, because like, to exactly what you just said, it's like, I am just not the type of person to handle that. Like,
Yeah, which is why I wrote my first book. My first book was called More Than Cash Flow, and I wrote it because
Okay.
I found I met so many people that got into real estate because everybody was talking about all the money that you could make,
Yeah.
and it truly is a wonderful vehicle if you're ready for it mentally and you know you're the kind of person that can handle it. But so many people think it's passive income, and passive means you can kick back and do nothing. And even if you
Yep.
hire a property manager, we had property managers steal rent money from us, and we had no idea. And so these kind of things, I
Interesting.
was like, you need to know all this before you get in. And some of you are going to read this book and not want to invest in real estate, and that's good, because those of
Y-
you who do will know what you're in for. And so when these horrible things happen all at once, because that's just the way it always seems to happen, you're ready.
Interesting. So what made you decide to write the book?
Well, I've always wanted to write a book. Like, this is going back to
Okay.
when I was a kid, right? I was like, I always want to
Sure.
write a book. But I started to build a profile in Canada, and publishers actually were contacting me. And so I ended up in
Okay.
conversations with Wiley, going back and forth. And they actually said, oh, this book idea, it's, we've already done generic real estate books. It's, we don't need another one on the market.
Okay.
So I said,
Interesting.
okay. And so then they said, well, but we're interested in working with you. So we went back and forth on some ideas, and they ended up like kind of honing in on real estate investing for couples, because my husband, he's now my husband, but my
Okay.
boyfriend and I at the time had been doing all this investing, and we were married at the time too. But and they said, why don't you do this book? And I was like, like, that doesn't sound very fun, but whatever, book deal. So I was
Okay. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
excited
Sure.
about it. In the end, though, they said that I didn't have a strong enough marketing platform to sell books. And so they turned me down. After 3 months of back and forth, they actually ended up saying, no, sorry. Um,
Okay. Interesting.
and it was kind of the way publishing works in Canada. Your only real option at that point is to go through a New York publishing house for the kind of book I wanted to write, and they're not going to be interested in publishing a Canadian real estate book. So I kind of was forced into the self-publishing path, which took a little while for my ego to get over, because I kind of felt like if nobody's going to care if I sell, like, if you self-publish, like, it feels like nobody validated you, so it's not good enough. That's kind of how I felt.
Sure.
And so I self-published, and the best part of this story to me is that my book went to #1 overall on Amazon. So it was ahead of
Wow.
the New.
Congrats. That's huge,
Thank you.
actually.
Thank you.
Yeah. Like
So,
that's a huge deal.
yeah, I mean, it was Wiley saying I can't sell books, and then I crushed any real estate book they've ever published by going
That's
#1
hilarious.
overall. So that was pretty fun.
Did I'm assuming they knew that happened?
Oh yeah, they knew. I had conversations with a couple of the people a few years later when I was working on my second book, and they said, congratulations on all your success. They were very nice about it.
Sure.
But yeah, at that point, I'm like, why would I ever go with a traditional publisher? Because they're not going to do what I did. So
Fair. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So walk me through your journey of saying, okay, you have the successful book. How did you actually get it to become successful?
yeah, so that's the funny part is, well, first of all, I was really committed to this book. And I think that a lot of people publish books and don't realize, even if they get a book deal, they don't realize all the work they have to do to get it out there.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work to write the book, but it's actually more work to get the book out there. And so you really have to mentally commit yourself to it. And I was committed. I was like, you know what? If I'm doing this, I'm going to make it better than a traditionally published book. So I invested over $12,000 into making my book awesome.
Wow.
As good as it would be if it was traditionally published. And then I contacted every single person I knew and tried to find a way to work together to get the word out. And that's why my book went to #1, is because there was a couple of key people who really loved my book and loved my message. And they had really, really big audiences of real estate investors and people who were interested in real estate. So they had the
Interesting.
same audience as what my book was targeted towards. And they loved the fact that I wasn't just going, hey, here's how you get rich in real estate. I'm going, hey, here's all the great things about real estate if you can get there. Like, if this is going to be something you want to do when you know what you're in for, then here's how you can do it. And they loved it. And so I had a few key people promote it and really get behind it and really help me with that launch week. And I got it to the top 100 with kind of my circle. And then they pushed it so hard it went to #1.
Interesting. No, I think that's really good advice. I think that's the thing kind of with anything in life, that it's not always like, you always hear about the one person that like creates something and like they automatically become like an instant millionaire. And like it happens so rarely. Like most people work their ass off to be super successful, right? Or like the one thing that finally breaks for them, it took them so much effort, and nobody kind of talks about that, right? Or not a lot of people talk about it, I should say.
Yeah. But here's the funny thing too. So I mean, my book did phenomenal and it was in the top 100 for 45 days, but there's a part of me that like kind of expected more to happen after that. So, like I
Okay,
didn't really think
interesting.
Oprah was going to call or anything, but
Sure, you were hoping.
yeah, I mean, yeah, but but I kind of thought like a lot more things and great things did happen. I actually had a lot of TV studios contacting me to, can we make a
Sure.
real estate book, like, or no, a real estate TV show? Cause those are so hot, right? All the fix and
Yeah.
flip type things. So I had 3 different production companies that, talking to me about different shows. And so I did have some pretty cool things happen, but yeah, there was kind of like when it did so well, you kind of feel like something even bigger is about to happen.
No, fair. No, I 100% agree. And I also think, and tell me if you felt the same way, is like, if nothing good or bad happens in like a week or a month or something like that, you're almost let down that like nothing great happened. And you're like, but nothing bad happened and things are good. But like you're always chasing that kind of like high again, right?
It's so true. And then even like, and so then the other thing is too, and I mean, we're totally off where we were going, but the other thing
No,
to
it's
realize is so then I'm start writing my second book and I'm like, oh my God, like it's never going to do as good as that first book. And should I even bother if
sure.
I'm not going to do as good as that first? Like, it's almost like when you achieve some level of success, it almost hurts you in a way.
Yeah, there's only one way to go when you've hit the top, you can only go down. Like, yeah, I no, it's fair.
But at the same time, I kind of talked myself through it and said, you know what, like, I want to write this next book. It won't, because it was luck. Like I would never promise anybody that I could get you to number one, because there's so many things that didn't happen that week for it to work out, right? Like no other big blockbuster book was launching the same week as my book.
Interesting.
And imagine if you're competing with a Tim Ferriss or the next Game of
Sure.
Thrones book, or a Hobbit or whatever, whatever one of these big,
No,
like,
fair enough.
you're
Yeah.
not going to hit number one because
Yeah.
you just can't compete with something that is such a mass market item. And so you have to know that there is some luck involved in things like that. And so, I finally just said, look, like I've got a reason for writing this book. I'm going to focus on that goal and not worry about, those things that feel great, but they're not actually the end game. And so I think for anybody who kind of sits there and goes, well, I don't know if I'll be a bestseller, or I don't know if I'll, my company will ever be on the top 100 fastest growing companies. Well, those things don't really matter. Like, what is the most important goal for you to achieve? Is it helping somebody? Is it raising your prices? Is it doing, something else? And you focus on that and just zero in on that and go. And I think that's how you kind of get over that hump.
No, I 100% agree. So, what was the second book about, and why did you kind of decide to actually write a second book?
Yeah, so the second book was really it was called The New Brand You, which we can talk about that title and why that title doesn't work in a minute, because that's a good lesson for people.
Interesting.
But it was called The New Brand You, and what it was because we raised millions of dollars in our real estate business. So in 2008, I actually ended up quitting my job and going full time into real estate, and then I also started a real estate training and education company.
Okay.
And when you go all out in 2008 into real estate, when the banks don't believe in financing any sort of real estate investment whatsoever anywhere in North America, you have to find money to do your own deals. So
Interesting.
we had to raise millions of dollars, and we ended up buying a house pretty much every single month for a lot of years.
Wow.
And to do that, we had to raise a lot of money. And initially we did a lot of that by cold, like reaching out to our network and getting contacts and kind of warm calling, if you will, to try to raise money, which was horrible. I hated it. And my husband hated it. So we ended up building, and that's how I built a brand. I was like, I gotta get people coming to us. And so I just started building a brand, writing blogs, shooting videos, giving talks, and eventually writing my book. And bit by bit, money started coming to us. And even when we got a connection, a referral, it was way easier to raise the money because we had gigantic credibility. So all of that is what I put into the second book, because people were like, that's what we ended up teaching everybody. People came to us for our training company. It's like, tell us how you're raising money. And
Sure.
so that's really what my second book is about. Even though it's not specifically a real estate book, it's how I built the brand that raised millions of dollars and really kind of changed how everything happened in both of our businesses because we didn't have to sell anymore. People came to us and we decided if we wanted to work with them or not.
Interesting. No, that's quite fascinating. So what made you decide to start Book Launchers?
Yeah, so there's kind of two driving factors behind this. So I kind of knew for quite a few years, I was all real estate all the time. And I like real estate's solid. We're still invested. And I think it's a fantastic vehicle for retirement and backup plans and financial comfort. But I don't love it. It was
Interesting.
always something I was doing to give myself financial security. It wasn't really meant to be the thing I do every day. So for quite a few years, I was kind of like, there's got to be something else. So it's kind of going on in the background. In the meantime, because of the success of my books, people were constantly coming to me wanting coaching and support. So I helped people who had book deals as well, like traditional book deals, as well as people who were self-publishing. I helped them with every step in the background on the side. I wasn't getting paid. I was just doing it for friends and colleagues that needed help. And I love that. I was having so much fun doing it. That's why I didn't mind doing it, not getting paid for it. In the meantime,
Interesting.
I'm running two businesses. So I'm like full out. And then my husband got into acting. And
Okay.
he started pursuing an acting career, and the story does come to a head here.
Sure.
So while I'm kind of working on these books and he's pursuing acting, we're stepping away from our real estate training company. And I'm going, I need to do something else, something new, because if you're not fully invested in the real estate training company, I don't want to do it alone. And so I kind of went, I need to help people with publishing books, but I knew I didn't want to coach and teach them. I wanted to do it for them or do a lot of it for them because I knew from myself doing it that it was a gigantic effort to do it all myself. I hired people, but even just hiring all those people was such a pain, vetting them and then hiring the wrong people and having to hire somebody new and pay somebody new to do something over. I thought I just need to have the perfect team to work with people like me and help them publish their book and then help them market it at the end, because there's all companies in the middle doing all the different pieces, but there really weren't very many companies coming at it from what's your goal? Let's help you create a book that's going to help you achieve the goal at the end. And by the way, we're going to help you get those speaking gigs. We're going to help you land those podcast interviews. We're going to help you do all those things you need to do to get your book out there.
Interesting. Okay. So how did you go about kind of actually launching this and actually going from kind of doing this for free to creating a business around it? Because that's a tricky transition.
It is a tricky transition. And part of what made it difficult and better at the same time is I moved. So while my husband was building his acting career in Vancouver, he really started to see that the best parts all audition out of Los Angeles. And
Sure.
and he also really loves comedy, and there's almost no comedy filming in Vancouver. There's a decent improv scene, but there's just not a lot of comedy. So if you want a comedic role, you're going to get a commercial. That's basically
I got you.
what you're getting in Vancouver. So I could see that he really wasn't going to get the career that he wanted in Vancouver. So I said, look, let's just move to Los Angeles.
Okay.
Let's just uproot ourselves and move. And it was for him, but for me, it actually was a great thing because in Canada, I am known in real estate, right? Like people just know me as a real estate person. So moving to Los Angeles gave me the opportunity to kind of set up shop and go, hey, I'm Julie the book broad, right? Like
I got it. Interesting.
And because people don't know me here. So it gave me an easier opportunity because I was trying to kind of start something new in Canada and everybody just wanted to talk real estate. So that helped me. I mean, it made things gigantically challenging because we also had a baby at the same time as all this.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it made things gigantically challenging because we're moving to a new country, having to set up all the stuff in a new country, but it had the advantage of nobody knows me.
Interesting. Okay. So how did you go about getting kind of your first few clients in a new country that you're not as popular in?
Yeah, so that's also where a personal brand is phenomenal, and being known as somebody who does what you say you're going to do and supports people no matter what. That's really what saved me on that. So I had a great I had a great list of people. And while they know me as a real estate investor, many of them have followed me and followed my journey for, 8, 10 years. So when I put up a flag and said, this is what I'm going to do, they knew about the success of my previous books. And they also know my credibility and know my integrity. So, I had my first 10 clients were people that knew me as real estate, knew me in the real estate space, but also knew that, when I say I'm going to do something, I go and do it. And, maybe I won't do it perfect the first time, but I'm going to do right by every single person. And that's kind of the words that people use when they said, you know what, I'll be one of your first clients. And so, yeah, the first 10 people that joined with us were all people that knew me previously. So that helped, right? Having that existing brand, even if it had nothing to do with what I'm doing, that really got me going, so that when I went to that perfect stranger, I didn't say, you're my first client.
Yeah. Interesting. No, that's interesting. I think that's actually really good advice. So how do you work? Let's say like I come to you, and how do you work with me to actually create a book?
Yeah. So it depends. First conversation we have, I'm going to try to understand what your goal is for writing a book and who
Okay.
your audience is. And I want to try to figure that out. And so this is where I do turn a few people away, because they aren't real. They're just like, I just want to write a book. Well, okay, why and what is it going to do for you? And a lot of people go, well, I want to help people. And that's just not enough. Your book won't be successful because it's going to be rough. Like there's going to be, when you get your edits back and you think your book's done, right? The first draft's done. And then the editor comes back with probably 50 questions and, more red than you've ever seen in one document in your life. You're going to go like, I suck. Nobody's going to care. Should I do this at all? Like, why am I bothering to do this? Like almost all of our clients go through some version of that. And
Sure.
if your why is to help people, like, you're going to give up. So you have to have a bigger why. And for a lot of people, it's kind of a twofold why. It's, I've learned something, I've done something that will help or inspire or save people money or save them time. And the other part is, I know that by sharing this, people will pay me more for my consulting service. They'll use my product even more. Dave Asprey of Bulletproof Coffee, he said that people who read one of his 2 books buy 2 times as much product from them as people who haven't read one of his books. So it sells products, it sells services, it is lead expander, it gets you on media, it gets you on speaking, gets you on stage. So if you come to me and say, I want to be a paid professional speaker, I have a message that's going to inspire people, awesome, that's perfect. Like there's so much we can work with. Now I got to figure out who you're targeting. And how we're going to help you get it there. But that's what we need to start the book. And then we're going to send you off to work with one of our writing coaches, and they'll help you craft an outline and a hook for your book. And because I'm in LA, I ended up hiring a lot of people who are Hollywood based, which makes for phenomenal book ideas. And I didn't do this on purpose. I'd love to say that I did this on purpose, but it's just who I thought was great for the job and hired. But because they have Hollywood experience, one of our coaches actually turned a computer book into a 7-year running TV series that he starred and wrote for 7 years. And he comes at things and he's like, this doesn't create curiosity, but what if you did this? And so it's really cool because he turns boring subjects into stuff that people are going to talk about and are going to share and care about. So yeah, that's where it starts. And then we work with you to either, we have a ghostwriter who will write it for you, or if you want to write it yourself, we have coaches who will coach you through it and support you through writing it, even if you're not a great writer. A lot of our clients actually speak out. They get the outline and they talk it out, get it transcribed, and then our editors kind of massage it from there. But yeah, that's how it all starts.
Interesting. And how long does it roughly take? I get that there's a million factors in there, but kind of on average, is it like months? Is it a couple of years? How long does it kind of take for me to actually go from kind of contact to actually holding, either the physical copy or the digital copy?
Yeah, I mean, it really does vary, even more than I expected. But
Okay.
it's lining up to be somewhere between 9 to 15 months for
Okay.
most people. Book length, your dedication, how many hours you put towards it, how you handle
Sure.
that slump after it comes back from edit.
Sure. Yeah.
those are all
Fair enough.
those are all factors. Obviously, if a ghostwriter writes it, it goes way faster because
Sure.
they're writing it, not you. But yeah, it does vary. But 9 to 15 months is a pretty good framework, and that also includes time leading up to the launch. Because a lot of people, and this is a mistake a lot of people make when they self-publish, their book is done and they load it up to Amazon like the next day. And
Okay.
and you can do that, like it's actually physically possible. The problem is it gives you no time to get review copies, to line up to line up your media, to line up speaking engagements, to line up promotions, to line up momentum around your launch. So we generally like to allow 6 weeks to even 3 months to get it
Okay.
all ready. And if you're in Canada, we would say you need 4 to 6 weeks minimum, because otherwise it's only going to be available on Amazon.com, and most of your buyers are going to be wanting to find it in chapters or on Amazon.ca. So international
Sure.
distribution takes longer. So you basically are forced to wait anyways.
Interesting. Okay. And then roughly what's the cost? Because it's got to depend whether I write it myself or get you ghostwriter to write it, or kind of a combination of a bunch of things. But is there kind of a base kind of starting that it's at least going to cost me?
Yeah, so we're set up differently than I think pretty much anybody else in the industry, whereas we're a
Okay.
membership-based company. So as long as you're a member, one of our professionals works on your book. It means the faster you go, the cheaper it's going to be. But basically, I did it that way so you had maximum flexibility. So you can come to us with a finished manuscript, you can come to us with an idea, and we can help you. You know, you can kind of come to us in any phase. So that right now is $699 a month.
Okay.
And like I said, it's about 9 to 15 months. So it works out really quite affordably, especially if you started to price out all the professionals that you hire. Like I said at the beginning, my first book, I spent $12,800 to hire
Mm.
all the people to have a book that was the same quality as a traditional published book. So it's really great value. And I say right now, because I don't know when people are going to listen to this, but we're definitely
Sure.
raising prices because we're not generating enough revenue for the costs that we have on the back end, because it is so expensive to have really awesome people working on a
Sure.
book. But yeah, ghostwriting is an add-on, but otherwise everything is included. And ghostwriting, it depends on what you want. Like we have what we call a writing assist package. So somebody can just write part of your book, or write 30,000 up to 30,000 words for you. And so that's a $6,000 add-on package, which a lot of our clients love, because they have material already existing on their blog, and so they can give it to the ghostwriter, and the ghostwriter for a pretty low cost can turn it into a full-fledged book. And then we have full-on ghostwriting packages where they'll interview people for you, they'll interview you, and they'll write your entire 50, 60,000 word book.
Interesting. Okay. No, that's quite fascinating. So you mentioned kind of about promotion and kind of launch. How do you kind of work with somebody to actually help them kind of promote and launch their book?
Yeah, for sure. So it does depend on the goal. So again,
Sure.
that's kind of
Okay.
where we focus in on what you're trying to do. But we have people on our team who are going to help you kind of figure out where you're going to get the best bang for your buck, because there's 100 ways to market your book, but it's the 80-20 rule. There is
Sure.
kind of 20% of the activities that are going to generate 80% of the results, and that's really what I found for my book. Actually almost 90% of the results came from just my network, and really leaning on my network strongly. But we have people on the team who one of the people on my team, she's worked as a speaker's agent, booking people for 10 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
her previous job was working just for one author, managing his speaking career. And she booked him for two. I think she said he was on the road for 270 days last year.
Wow.
And so that, like, she's really good at getting people speaking gigs, as well as pitching them for media and podcast interviews, because that's what she's been doing for the last 14 years.
Wow.
And so we'll partner you with her, and she'll do, depending on how we work together, she'll do up to 10 pitches a month. Or more if you want to upgrade into, like a full-on, like, I want you to be my agency type arrangement. But most of our clients are going to plan the launch. We'll get everything set up social media wise on your Goodreads. We've got copywriters who write all all the copy, we help you plan a launch party, and then we will go out and we'll try and get you these speaking gigs, these podcast bookings, media attention, all these kind of things to help you with launch. But not everybody is a good fit for speaking gigs, so we might pursue a different kind of angle for you depending on who you want to get your book in front of.
Sure. So if I have a book already done, can I basically use the back half of your platform to kind of help me kind of just promote, or maybe kind of put a little bit of maybe customizations into the book, or do I kind of have to come in at the beginning or the pretty early stages?
Yeah, we prefer you to be earlier stages, just because a lot of people haven't thought about the marketing when they're developing their book. So a lot of people come to us with finished books that are very difficult to market because they've missed some really key things that would have made it good to market. That said, somebody who comes to us with a finished book but they're open to changes, we definitely will work with them. And we have taken on a couple of people with finished books because they just didn't do the basics around marketing, but the book was solid. So it's kind of a long answer to say it depends on your book.
Sure.
Because I'm not going to.
That's kind of what I figured, to be honest. Yeah.
I'm not going to take on a client that I don't think we can make them really, really happy, because we're still a new company, and the most important, and even when I've been around for 10 years, this is all I'm going to care about, is creating massive success stories so people tell others about us, right?
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and you're right. Like, some people aren't open to kind of that constructive feedback to actually make it successful, right? And if you're not open to that, there's no point in you working with them.
Exactly. And I mean, one of the people that came to us that I turned away, his book had the same title as 8 other books. He wrote it under a pen name, and he didn't want anybody he knew to know he had written the book. So
interesting.
I was kind of like, well, everything we do to help you market the book kind of relies on at least 2 of 3 of those things to be in place.
Sure.
We need a better title, a phenomenal title that we can almost use to market it itself without using you, or you need to be able to tell people that you've written it, or use your real name so we can leverage off who you are. And so he wasn't willing to change any of those 3 things. So I just said, I'm sorry, like, we're not going to have much success for you. Running Amazon ads isn't going to do anything if you don't have reviews and you don't have, things to back up your book already.
So you just did a writer's retreat. What exactly did you do, and why did you decide to do it?
Yeah, so I did it primarily because we had a few clients who were struggling to get their books done, and even send us any kind of words at all. And so I kind of said, well, what's going on? And it all came down to, just life and business was not giving them any time to focus. So I said, okay, well, if I create somewhere that you can come write, will you come? And so that was really the driving reason behind it. But I invited people who weren't clients too. And really, it was cool because in 2 days, people wrote an average of 8,500 words, and a few people wrote 11,000 words. So that's kind of like writing a quarter of a book in 2 days.
That's crazy. That's a lot. That's great, but that's a lot.
Yeah, it was wild, but I took people's phones away. So that incited a lot of panic. But
Sure, I can imagine. Yeah.
But I think that's also why they got so much done. But one of the fun things was, have you heard of William Hung? Do you know who he is?
Yeah, the American Idol guy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So he's one of our clients, and it was funny because he's exactly like, if you've seen him on TV, he's exactly like that in person. And he kind of inspired everybody in the room, which I think also brought out a lot of, good writing, because he was the first one to volunteer. Nobody wanted to tell anybody else what their book was about. Nobody wanted to share their outline. But this guy has no fear, which is how you can audition for, American Idol, because you're like, hey, this sounds like fun. I want a career as a singer, and I'm going to audition for American Idol, and still be nice about it at the end when Simon Cowell makes fun of you.
Sure.
So he was always the first one to go, hey, here's my outline. Hey, here's my idea. Hey, here's this. And just no fear at all. And I think that also, having somebody in the room that is like that really inspires people. So that was kind of fun. I had to share that part.
No, I think that's true. I think with a lot of people, it's scary putting content out there to your family, friends, complete strangers. So it makes sense. Like, I think it's even scary to sit behind a computer and post something online, never mind being in a room with people and say, hey, this is what I'm going to write about, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking people in the eye as you tell them the idea for your book, and that like there's no way to like most people aren't going to be able to hide the fact that they think your idea sucks if that is the case.
Sure.
So yeah, so it was great to have somebody like him go first and share what he was going to write about, and then of course everybody had to ask him about all his adventures.
Sure. Yeah. Fair enough.
But yeah, so I think it's really important, and I think that's kind of a generic or like a specific story to have a generic lesson, and that's try to surround yourself with people who will inspire you to share your message and also be honest about how your message could be stronger, because that's really what happened in that room is people then believed in their message, and it was easier to write it. Because after they shared it, nobody in the room had a bad idea, but everybody's idea could be improved upon.
Sure.
And as we worked on their ideas, people could really see how other people were going to like it, how other people were going to care about it, how it was in fact unique. Because a lot of people think, oh, there's already been 100 books in my space or 1,000 books in my space. Like, why should I bother writing it? But when you talk about it and you get that unique idea that makes you just that little bit different and makes it like, okay, people actually do need to hear my version of what's happened or how to do this, then people are really inspired. And I think it's kind of that combination of no phones, no internet, and having that inspiration and belief in yourself that your idea is good and people need to hear it.
Interesting. So did you have people basically writing on just typing on the computer, or were some people actually like handwriting it out, or how did that kind of work?
Yeah, we had one person who hand wrote it out, which I was, I questioned that because now you have to type it. Like at some point it's got to get in the computer. But she said, no, I write really, really fast. And she was one of the people who wrote more than 11,000 words that weekend.
Wow.
But everybody else was on the computer. And one of the days they did have internet, if they needed it for research. But one of the days I purposely made sure they could not access the internet because I believe fully that, you need to just focus and not have any interruptions or distractions and write. And so, yeah, but most people typed on the computer. There was a few people with iPads, keyboards and iPads, but yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because anytime I write like any like blog posts or something, I'll either do it on my phone or on like a tablet. Like I find I can't focus very well if I'm on a computer a lot of the time, which is like weird because I'm on a computer all day, every day. But I don't know. It's slower, but I think I have to before I write something, I have to think about it because it's such a nightmare to go back and kind of change your sentences if you're on like a tablet or something. And I don't use like a keyboard. Like I use the on-screen keyboard. So
my goodness.
So it's like, I tell people that they just laugh, but like somehow it works for me. I edit it on like on a laptop and then, with a keyboard, but just when I get the first kind of draft down, I just like bang it out as quick as possible on like a tablet or phone.
And I think that's good. Like, what works for you. And I think a lot of people don't even play around with it, which is also kind of what we did. We played around with like, you have to write for 12 minutes straight and you can't do anything else. And, imagine Pac-Man's coming for every word as soon as you pause. We experimented with all kinds of ways and places and approaches because I think that, a lot of us just sit down at the computer and do what we always do. And if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always gotten, right? So I think it's good that you change it up and what works for you. And I think I encourage anybody listening to try to figure that out for themselves. Like, where are you going to be able to get your best kind of focus work done?
No, I 100% agree with you. That's quite fascinating. So you've done a bunch of books now. What advice do you kind of give people that are either kind of thinking about doing their own book?
I think the most important thing is to know your goal, and not just. And a lot of people say, "Well, I want to be a bestseller," and that's forgive me if this is you and you're thinking that, but that's a very ego-driven goal, and that's okay. If that is like all you care about, then more power to you. You can clearly set yourself up to become a bestseller. But most people, I'm like, okay, why? And a lot of times it comes back to, well, I need more credibility because I want to charge higher prices. I want to be a speaker. I want to be on a news station. I want my own TV show. And so now with that goal, you can actually really clearly focus your book in on the audience that is most likely to get you to that goal. And you're still writing your story and your spin, but you're more likely to achieve the result you want when you start with a very clear goal.
Makes sense. Okay. So what about to people that are looking to maybe self-publish their book? Like, what advice do you kind of give them if they don't use like a platform like you guys?
Yeah, I mean, anybody can self-publish now, and it's the greatest thing and the biggest challenge, because a lot of people, you can self-publish without any editing, without any professionals on your team, and you can put a book out there. But the problem with doing that is that you now have a crappy book out there.
Yeah. No, fair.
So you have to invest in the right people. And I think even if you're on a budget, do whatever you have to do to get a professional cover and to get somebody with experience editing your book. Like, a lot of people go, oh, my wife is really good with details. Well, editing is a profession. And you wouldn't go to somebody who is really good with teeth. You'd go to a dentist, right?
Yeah. No, you're right. You're totally right. That's actually a really good analogy. I never really thought of it like that, but you're right.
Yeah. So I think for a lot of people, you can self-publish, and it's all like, I have a phenomenal YouTube channel that will guide you through almost everything you need to do. It's booklaunchers.tv. Okay. There's so many resources there. And so that actually walks you through, okay, do you want to use Ingram Spark versus CreateSpace? If you want to get it in bookstores, how do you do that? Do you want it in libraries? So I have all that kind of stuff there. You don't need to work with a company like Book Launchers. The only reason to work with somebody like us is if you don't have a lot of time, and you're really trying to achieve a business goal with your book. And again, you need somebody else to do all the pieces for you so you can keep running your business or doing your profession and still get your book out there. But I self-published both my books, and it's very doable. It's very possible, but I spent hundreds of hours to make it happen on top of the work that had to go into actually just writing the book.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is a ton of work that I don't think people realize, no matter what way you go.
It is, yeah. Even if you work with a company like us, and I always tell people this, like, there's still going to be pain involved. Like, I'm going to make it as easy as possible, but like we talked about, when that first draft comes back from the editor, you're going to experience some sort of an emotional letdown.
Oh, fair. Yeah. No, fair enough. I actually, I can't remember what I told you. Like, I got asked a number of years ago to write a tech, like, kind of book by a publisher out of the UK. And I knew it was going to be a lot of work, but I did not realize it was going to be that much work. Right? And like, I don't regret it. I actually think it was probably one of the best things I've ever done. But I think just to kind of stress that again, like, to people, that like, it's totally doable. You should do it if that's kind of your passion, but it is a ton of work. And you're right. Like, they send back an edit and you're just like, oh, wow, maybe I should just quit. But like, it's an emotional kind of roller coaster. Or
it is. And so and if you're going to need support through all of that, that's where a company like Book Launchers comes in. Because there are two different camps. It's kind of like real estate investing. Like, there's people that are going to do everything themselves, and there's other people that are going to hire the people to go in and fix the toilets and paint their houses and, all those pieces. And I am that person who wants to hire people who are better at it than me, that, so I can go do the things I'm good at while they do the things that they're good at. So, totally. The people like me, you should hire Book Launchers. But if you're one of those people who likes to go figure out all the pieces and do it yourself, you can do it yourself for sure.
No, I think that's actually really good advice to people. I think that the trick with some of this stuff is you just really need to see what works for you, right? And I think it makes a lot of sense, though, especially for people that are busy, to use you guys, because it's a ton of work, and you don't, like, I think people don't understand how much time and effort that they will kind of spend on it, right? And just like trial and erroring stuff too, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, hiring people and then finding out halfway through you hired the wrong person. That happens all the time.
Sure.
And you still pay that person for their mediocre work that didn't work for you in most cases, and then you've wasted all that time too. So yeah, there's a lot of things. Plus, even just little decisions, and this is some of the stuff that's on my YouTube channel. I didn't check a box in uploading my book for it to be available in bookstores, and by missing that checked box, I missed out on distribution in the whole province of Alberta in the bookstores. And also another box that I checked wrongly, it cost me $1,200 in returned books
Wow.
So there's little mistakes, and that's with me researching, like, dozens of hours trying to figure out how to do this, and I still made mistakes.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of little pieces that, like you said, you just don't know it until you're deep into it, and you're going, oh my goodness, like, how do I do this? What do I do? I think it's a pain in the butt.
No, yeah, fair enough. But we're coming to the end of the show, so let's maybe close with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself and book launchers. Yeah,
you bet. So I already mentioned my YouTube channel. So for all you do-it-yourselfers or people who just want to learn more, I have lots of great videos there. I have new videos every Friday, so booklaunchers.tv. And then my website, booklaunchers.com. And I highly recommend people check out, we have a game plan on 8 ways to sell 1,000 books for under $100, which are, in fact, the ways that I use to bring my book to #1 and my second book into the top 100. And you can get that at booklaunchers.com/game plan.
Perfect, Julie. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. To join the free community, buy some merch, sponsor the show, or sign up for the newsletter, please visit the website at buildingthefutureshow.com. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.